They promised me a Mother's Day trip a chance to reconnect, but instead they left me stranded at a train station with a note that would change everything. It was a quiet morning when the phone rang. I wasn't expecting it, whoever does, especially from Lynn, my daughter. It had been months since we had really spoken. Our conversations had become short, almost like passing notes in a hallway, polite greetings, quick exchanges, nothing meaningful. Just a series of well-meaning but empty words. I had grown used to the distance between us, the silence that had stretched long and wide after so many years of being a mother. When I saw her name pop up on the screen, I hesitated. Maybe it was a wrong number. Maybe she had just dialed out of habit. But still something inside me, something faint, a flicker of hope nudged me to pick up. "Hi, Mom." Lynn's voice was sweet, almost rehearsed, too polished for my liking. It caught me off guard. I had expected the usual awkwardness, the tone of someone who wasn't quite sure how to talk to their mother anymore. But this felt different. She wasn't avoiding me. She had a proposal for me. A Mother's Day trip. A train ride through the countryside, she said. A vintage locomotive with soft music playing and the endless peaceful view of the cornfields stretching beyond Des Moines. It sounded beautiful, almost like a scene from a dream. A promise of something new, something to reconnect us. I felt a surge of emotions I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long time. Why had she called me now? After all the months of nothing, was this real? Was this a sign, or just a gesture to ease her guilt? She went on to explain that Alex, her husband, thought it would be healing for both of us. Healing. The word hung in the air like a balm on an old wound, yet I couldn't shake the skepticism that filled my chest. But despite my doubts, despite the wall I had built around myself, a tiny, fragile part of me, one I hadn't dared to acknowledge, wanted to believe her. Maybe I was still needed. Maybe I was still a part of something, still a mother, still important. The day of the trip, I woke up early feeling a mix of excitement and hesitation. There was something different about this day, something that made me want to believe that maybe this trip would bring me back to the daughter I once knew. I packed lightly, just enough for a short getaway. My late husband's watch, the one he'd given me before he passed, was carefully tucked into my bag. It had been years since I'd worn it, but today, for some reason, it felt important. I also packed a small notebook, just in case I wanted to jot down my thoughts or maybe write about the moments that would unfold. Writing had always been a way for me to make sense of my world when everything felt too overwhelming. Alex, of course, barely said a word during the drive. His attention was glued to his phone as usual. His silence had become so familiar it didn't sting anymore. I sat beside him, looking out the window at the blurred landscapes, feeling the weight of the past few months pressing down on me. How had we gotten here? How had we drifted so far apart? When we arrived at the train station, I was surprised by the smallness of it. It felt so quiet, the kind of place that holds its own secrets, its own stories. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and dust, and the distant sound of the train tracks added to the melancholy feeling that had settled in my chest. Lynn and Alex exchanged a few words. Then Lynn turned to me, flashing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Mom, we just need to check with the agent." "We'll be right back," she said, her voice soft, almost rehearsed. I nodded, but as they walked off toward the far end of the platform, I felt a twinge of unease. It wasn't like them to leave me alone, especially after everything, but I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe they just needed to take care of the final details. I took a seat on the nearest bench, trying to calm my racing thoughts. Time passed, 10 minutes, then 20. Still no sign of Lynn or Alex. My hands started to feel clammy, and the soft murmur of the station seemed to grow louder in my ears. I glanced around, but there was no one else I knew. Just a couple with a small child and a man reading a paperback. I tried to shake the feeling of being forgotten, of being left behind, but it wouldn't go away. I stood up my legs, feeling heavy, and walked toward the place where Lynn and Alex had disappeared. My heart began to race, each step more uncertain than the last. As I turned the corner, my eyes scanned the platform, but they weren't there. I called out Lynn. "Alex." My voice cracked, but the echo of my words seemed to fade, swallowed by the silence. That's when I saw it. There, taped underneath the bench I had just vacated, was a small folded note. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. I opened it slowly, afraid of what I might read, yet unable to stop myself. The words on the paper seemed to blur in front of my eyes. "If she still has her mind, she'll find her way back." My chest tightened, the air around me, suddenly feeling too thin to breathe. I read the note again, my hands trembling, but the meaning sank in, heavy and cold. Everything I had thought this day would be a moment of reconnection, of healing, had vanished in an instant. I wasn't just forgotten. I was left behind, alone. The station around me felt emptier than before. The weight of the note in my hand felt heavier than the suitcase I had left behind at the station. "If she still has her mind, she'll find her way back." The words burned in my chest. I stood there for what felt like hours, my mind spinning, my breath shallow. I tried to steady myself, but the shock of abandonment hit me like a wave, each breath harder to take than the last. Lynn and Alex had left me. They had promised me a day together, a chance to reconnect, but instead they had abandoned me with nothing more than a cruel note. The sun beat down on me as I slowly stood up from the bench, my legs feeling like they might buckle beneath me. Everything around me felt so bright, too bright, as though the whole world had suddenly turned glaring and sharp. The concrete beneath my shoes felt like an endless stretch of empty road ahead, one that I had no choice but to walk. My legs trembled each step, feeling heavier than the last, and I couldn't help but wonder why. Why had they done this to me? I walked. I didn't know where I was going, but I had to move. Every step seemed to push me farther from the confusion of the station and deeper into the aching solitude I had tried so hard to avoid. The road was quiet, no cars, no people, just me and the distant hum of the highway. I walked until my feet ached, until my legs trembled from exhaustion. Every now and then I would glance over my shoulder, half expecting to see Lynn or Alex rushing to catch up with me, but there was nothing. No one was coming. As I reached the outskirts of town, I saw a rundown gas station up ahead. The neon sign flickered, casting a faint, lonely glow on the dusty road. I stumbled toward it, gasping for breath, my chest tight with panic and disbelief. I leaned against the wall of the station, trying to catch my breath, my heart still racing, unsure of what to do next. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to turn to. That's when I saw him. Michael, an older man, maybe in his late 60s, dressed in a faded plaid shirt and jeans, standing beside a rusty truck. His eyes were kind, his face lined with age, but there was a softness to him. I noticed him glance at me, a look of quiet understanding in his eyes. He didn't ask questions, just saw me sitting there alone, looking like I had nowhere left to go. "Need a ride?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. I hesitated, my instincts telling me to be cautious, to not trust so easily. But something in his demeanor, something about his calm presence, made me feel like I had no choice. I nodded slowly, feeling a strange sense of relief that someone, anyone, had noticed me. He didn't push for details. He didn't ask why I was there, why I looked so lost. He just opened the door of the truck and motioned for me to get in. I climbed in, feeling the coolness of the seat against my aching body. The truck roared to life, and we drove away from the gas station, away from the chaos of my thoughts. As we passed through the town, I watched the buildings blur, my mind still reeling from the events at the station. The pain of being left behind still weighed heavy, but Michael's quiet presence, his wordless kindness, helped ease the sharp edges of my grief, if only for a moment. He drove me to a small town, the kind of place that felt safe, peaceful. A place where I could breathe again, away from the pain of being abandoned. The truck rumbled down quiet, empty roads, the sound of the engine steady and calming. The air outside had a chill to it, but inside the truck I could feel warmth spreading through my bones. Michael didn't ask me any more questions during the drive. He just let the silence stretch comfortable, unspoken. It was a kind of silence I hadn't known in a long time, one that didn't make me feel invisible or awkward. For once, I didn't have to fill the space with words. We arrived at his home, a modest cottage tucked away at the edge of town. It looked like a place that had lived many years, each crack in the wood and every worn-out chair telling stories of the past. I could tell it wasn't much, maybe not a place anyone would choose for a vacation, but somehow in that moment it felt like everything I needed. The house was small, but the warmth inside was comforting, the kind of warmth you feel when you're no longer alone in your pain. Michael didn't try to engage me in conversation right away. He didn't push me to share my story or ask why I looked so lost. Instead, he simply offered me a place to rest. "Take your time," he said, his voice soft. "You're welcome here." I sank into an old recliner by the window, the one with the faded floral pattern that seemed as worn as the house itself. Michael went about his business, moving quietly around the kitchen. It wasn't long before he came back with a steaming bowl of soup and a piece of bread. He set it down on a small wooden table in front of me and gave me a gentle nod, as though his care for me was as simple and expected as the air I breathed. I hadn't realized how hungry I was until I took the first bite. The soup was warm, simple, but so comforting, like something that could heal wounds I hadn't even known I had. He didn't ask if I liked it or if I needed anything. He just let me be. And that in itself was an act of kindness I hadn't known I needed until that moment. I ate slowly, savoring the quiet, the peace. It felt like the weight of everything I had left behind, my family, the betrayal, the empty station, was finally lifting. I didn't feel the urge to hide or retreat. For once, I didn't have to pretend. I could simply exist. Later that evening, Michael set up a cot for me in the spare room. It wasn't much, just a thin mattress on the floor, but it felt like luxury compared to the emotional exhaustion I had been carrying all day. He didn't stay to chat, didn't try to fill the space with words. He just made sure I was comfortable and then quietly left the room. I lay there in the stillness of the room, the night sounds of the house settling around me. For the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to think. The abandonment by Lynn and Alex, how it had felt like being tossed aside like an old coat they no longer needed, still stung. The feeling of being erased from their lives, so easily forgotten, was a heavy weight on my chest. But in the stillness of Michael's home, I found something else. I realized I was free. Free from their expectations, free from the manipulation. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't have to play the role they had cast me in. I didn't have to smile through their demands, pretending everything was fine. I wasn't just left behind. I was no longer a part of their game. I could feel the pain begin to fade, replaced by a quiet clarity. I didn't have to go back. I didn't have to let them back in. I could walk away. And in this small, quiet house, far from their expectations, I could finally begin again. The drive back to my house was quieter than I expected. Michael didn't speak much, and neither did I. The comfort I had felt in his presence lingered in the air, but there was also a weight pressing down on me. I had to return to my own life, to the place where the pain had started, to the place I had once called home. I had been away for a few days, but even as I approached the familiar driveway, something felt different. It wasn't just the absence of Lynn and Alex. It was something deeper, something unsettling in the stillness of the air. I unlocked the front door slowly, taking in the familiar smell of lavender, an old scent that used to fill the house, but even that felt faint now. The door creaked as it opened, the small, unremarkable sound that once signified comfort now felt like an omen. I stepped inside, and immediately I felt it, the subtle changes. The house was eerily still, but it was more than just silence. It felt wrong. The first thing I noticed was the desk. My desk, where I had always kept my papers in order, was disheveled. The papers were shuffled around carelessly as if someone had been rifling through them. My hands instinctively reached for the corners of the paper, smoothing them out, but the unease in my chest only deepened. It wasn't just the mess. It was the feeling that someone had been here looking for something. I walked into the kitchen hoping the simple act of making a cup of tea might ground me, but as I opened the drawer where I kept the utensils, I saw that it was slightly ajar, just enough for me to notice. I pulled it open fully, and sure enough the contents inside were disorganized, as if someone had searched through it hastily looking for something, and then quickly closing it when they didn't find what they wanted. My heart started racing, but I couldn't stop myself from walking to my bedroom. There, the safe in my closet caught my eye. I had always kept important documents there, things that were vital to my life, my will, personal letters, legal documents. But now, as I approached, I noticed something strange. There were faint scratches around the lock, barely visible to the naked eye, but they were there. Someone had tried to tamper with it. Someone had been in my safe. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I stepped back, my breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just a feeling of being invaded. It was deliberate. They had been trying to take control of my life, my things, my finances, my future. I had trusted them. I had believed that Lynn and Alex were doing what was best for me. But now I saw the truth. They weren't concerned about my well-being. They had been planning to take control to strip me of my autonomy and replace my decisions with their own. The shock of it all, how easily they had manipulated me, how casually they had crossed lines, was almost unbearable. I stood there in the silence of my bedroom, feeling the weight of it all. The betrayal wasn't just in the acts they had carried out. It was in the realization that they had seen me as someone to control someone who could be easily forgotten, easily manipulated. But beneath the shock, something else stirred. A growing resolve, a spark of strength that had been buried beneath years of neglect. I wasn't just going to let them take everything from me. I wasn't going to let them rewrite my life. This was my house, my life, and it was time I took control back. The weight of the betrayal was still heavy on me, but it was no longer the only thing I felt. As the shock began to fade, it was replaced by something stronger, a quiet, determined resolve. I wasn't going to let Lynn and Alex continue their manipulative game. I wasn't going to sit idly by while they tried to take everything from me. It was time to fight back. I started by keeping records. Every day I would sit down with my journal and write. It wasn't just about the things I had seen, it was about everything. The subtle changes I noticed at home, the way Lynn would glance at me just a little too long, the way Alex would avoid my eyes, as if trying to pretend nothing was wrong. I documented every encounter, every odd conversation, every suspicious gesture. At first I thought it might be paranoia, just the result of everything weighing on my mind. But the more I wrote, the clearer the pattern became. There was something deliberate in their actions. Their visits, their comments, the small ways they tried to manipulate me into thinking I wasn't capable of managing my own life. It was all part of a strategy, a well-thought-out plan to take control. And I was not going to let them succeed. I knew I needed more than just my observations. I needed evidence, hard proof. So I started recording our conversations. It felt wrong, like I was betraying the last bit of trust I had with my own daughter, but I had no choice. Every time Lynn would call, every time she visited, I would turn on my phone and start recording. Her voice, her questions, the way she would gently test my memory, or ask about things she knew I had no trouble remembering. It all started to add up. It hurt deeply. To hear the voice I had once loved, the voice that had once been filled with care and respect, now filled with doubt and condescension. But I couldn't stop. I had to keep track of everything they were doing, every manipulation, every time they tried to undermine me. This wasn't just about protecting my finances, it was about protecting my dignity, my right to make my own decisions. When I had enough recordings and notes, I knew it was time to take the next step. I reached out to Claire, a lawyer I had trusted for years. She had always been someone I could rely on, someone who understood the importance of protecting oneself, especially when family becomes a threat. She listened as I explained everything, my suspicions, my fears, and the evidence I had gathered. Her expression remained calm, professional, but there was something in her eyes that told me she understood exactly what I was facing. Together we filed for a preemptive legal injunction. The goal was simple: to block any changes to my estate and prevent Lynn and Alex from gaining control over my finances. Claire explained the process to me, how it would protect my assets, freeze any actions they might take, and give me the time I needed to build a stronger case. The idea of taking such a bold step filled me with a sense of power I hadn't felt in a long time. But as I signed the papers, I realized something else. This wasn't just about protecting my money. It was about taking back my life, taking back my agency. Lynn and Alex had thought they could control me, that they could manipulate me into submission. But they had underestimated one thing: my ability to fight for myself. I wasn't just protecting my estate. I was protecting my right to live freely, without fear, without the constant shadow of manipulation. I was reclaiming my life, and I wasn't going to let them take it from me. The days following my decision to take legal action felt both like an eternity and a fleeting moment. I was caught between the shock of everything I had discovered and the sharp, cold clarity of what I had to do next. Every day felt like I was walking a tightrope, balancing between keeping my head down and preparing for the storm that was surely coming. I couldn't afford to let Lynn or Alex know I was onto their plans. If they suspected I was fighting back, they would escalate their manipulations. They were clever, and they had been planning this for far too long. I knew I had to be patient. I had to be methodical. Every conversation with Lynn and Alex had to be recorded. Every suspicious gesture had to be noted. So I spent hours each day in my quiet corner of the house, documenting everything. I reviewed my journal, adding more details as I recalled them, making sure nothing was left out. Their comments, the way they tried to make me doubt myself, the way they subtly tested my memory, it was all part of a larger strategy, a strategy I had to expose. The recordings on my phone were growing too. I had captured so many conversations, some of them seemingly innocent, others dripping with subtle undertones of manipulation. Lynn's voice, once warm and caring, now sounded almost rehearsed, as if she were playing a part in a script she had written for me. But I knew better. Each word, each question, each time she asked about my health or my finances, it was all part of a strategy to make me feel less capable, less competent. It was insidious, but I wasn't blind anymore. I met with Claire again, sharing the recordings and notes I had meticulously gathered. Claire was methodical too. She was a steady presence in my life, someone I could rely on when everything else felt chaotic. We went over the legal steps, discussing the injunction and what more we could do to protect myself. She helped me refine my case, focusing on the key points that would show that Lynn and Alex were acting out of self-interest, not concern for me. It wasn't just about protecting my estate. It was about proving that they had been attempting to manipulate me to take control of my life. I felt a sense of power growing inside me as I worked with Claire. There was no longer any doubt in my mind that I was doing the right thing. I wasn't just protecting my assets. I was standing up for myself, for the person I had been, before I let them walk all over me. The anger that had been simmering beneath the surface for so long was finally bubbling up, and I wasn't going to let it burn me any longer. I was going to use it. Through all of this, Michael remained my constant. He never asked questions, never pried into the details of my plan. He simply showed up every day, offering quiet support when I needed it most. He helped me organize my documents, ensuring that everything was in place. His home had become a safe haven for me, a place where I could focus on what needed to be done without the constant tension of family dynamics weighing on me. Michael's support wasn't loud or flashy. He didn't offer grand speeches or try to fill the silence with unnecessary words. He just listened when I needed to talk, and when I didn't, he respected the silence. He would bring me coffee in the morning, his movements always slow and deliberate, as if to remind me that there was no rush. I wasn't alone in this fight. He was standing by me quietly but firmly. There were moments when I would catch myself feeling overwhelmed by the weight of what was coming, by the realization that my own family was trying to take control of my life. But then I would think of Michael, of his quiet strength, and I would take a deep breath. I had come this far. I couldn't back down now. The battle ahead was going to be tough. But I was ready. I had built my defenses, gathered my evidence, and with Michael by my side and Claire guiding me, I knew I had a fighting chance. It was time to confront the manipulations, to face the truth of what Lynn and Alex had been trying to do, and to protect everything I held dear. No longer would I be the one standing in the shadows waiting for someone else to decide my fate. I was taking control. The day I received the call from Claire, everything changed. It had been a week since I'd last met with her, and in that time, I had been busy still carefully preparing, still making sure I wasn't caught off guard. But now it felt like something was finally shifting in my favor. Emily, Claire's voice was steady on the other end of the line. "We've done it. The injunction has been filed and it's been accepted. The bank has been notified and no changes can be made to your estate without your explicit consent." I let her words settle in, the weight of them sinking in slowly. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was on the offensive instead of the defensive. It wasn't just about protecting my finances anymore. It was about reclaiming control of my life, my dignity, my sense of self. The injunction would freeze all access to my estate, preventing Lynn and Alex from making any changes or attempts to access my accounts. It was a bold move, but it was necessary. I had worked too hard, fought too long to let them continue their game, and now it was time to watch the pieces fall into place. Later that afternoon, as I sat in Michael's living room, the phone rang again. This time it was a call from the bank manager. I felt a tight knot form in my stomach, a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. "Ms. Emily, I just wanted to let you know that Lynn and Alex came in earlier today. They were trying to access your joint accounts. However, we've informed them that everything is frozen due to the legal injunction you filed. They were not pleased." The manager explained, her voice calm, but filled with a trace of sympathy. I felt a strange sense of satisfaction wash over me. It was happening. Their carefully laid plan, weeks, maybe months, of manipulating me, of trying to isolate me, of plotting to take control, was starting to crumble before their eyes. They tried to argue, of course, the bank manager continued, but we stood firm. "There's nothing they can do until we receive further instructions from you." I took a slow breath, holding the phone to my ear. Part of me felt a little guilty. After all, they were my family, my daughter, my son-in-law, but the guilt was quickly replaced by something stronger: relief. Lynn and Alex had crossed the line. They had underestimated me. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady, despite the emotions stirring within me. "Thank you for handling it. Please let me know if they try anything else." "Of course, Ms. Emily. You're in good hands," the manager replied. As I hung up the phone, I leaned back against the couch and closed my eyes for a moment. The world around me felt a little quieter, the weight of uncertainty lifting. Lynn and Alex had been playing a game for so long, and now the rules had changed. They couldn't just walk into my life and take control anymore. They couldn't just decide what was best for me. But even as I felt a sense of victory, I knew this was just the beginning. They would push back. They would fight for what they thought they were entitled to. But I was ready. Soon enough, I knew Lynn and Alex would realize their plan had failed. The confrontation was inevitable, and I was prepared for it. They had believed they could erase me, make me feel small, make me feel helpless. But they hadn't counted on my ability to fight back. They hadn't counted on the strength I had left inside of me. It wasn't over yet, but the first blow had been struck, and I wasn't going to stop fighting now. The weight of everything I had been through seemed to lift the moment the final papers were signed and the injunction went into effect. It wasn't just the legal victory. It wasn't even the fact that Lynn and Alex's plans had been blocked. No, it was something deeper. I was no longer just a passive participant in my own life. I had taken control finally, and it felt like I was breathing for the first time in years. But now the question was, what would I do with this newfound freedom? The answer came to me slowly, like a soft whisper in the quiet spaces of my mind. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't stay in this house, this place that had once been a home, but now felt like a cage. A cage built with expectations, manipulations, and lies. With the help of Michael, who never asked questions but simply offered support, I packed up my life. It wasn't much. A few boxes of books, some old photos and personal items, things that meant something to me, not to anyone else. Michael drove me, helping me settle into a small, quiet house at the edge of town, tucked away in a secluded area where the noise of the world seemed to fade. The house was modest, nothing grand, but to me, it was perfect. It was mine. The walls felt like they were still breathing, like they were waiting for me to fill them with the sounds of life, to start anew. The air felt lighter here, the kind of stillness that invited peace rather than silence. Michael helped me unpack stacking boxes of books in the corner of my new living room, arranging them in a way that made the space feel warm and lived in. It was a small house, but it was mine, and for the first time in ages, it felt like I was stepping into a future of my own making. Not one built by my family's expectations or their manipulations, but a future built on my own terms. And it was here in this small, quiet place that I knew what I needed to do next. I couldn't just leave my old life behind and forget what had happened. I couldn't pretend that the pain of betrayal wasn't real, but I could use my experience for something greater, something that would give my journey meaning. I started a foundation. It wasn't large at first, just an idea that grew over time. A foundation for women, over 60 women who, like me, needed help reclaiming control over their lives and finances. I had spent so much of my life feeling small, invisible, and manipulated. But now I had a voice, and I wasn't going to let it go to waste. The foundation became my purpose. Every woman I helped, every voice I gave strength to, made me feel whole in a way I hadn't felt in years. It was more than just fighting for my own freedom. It was about ensuring that other women, especially those who felt like they had no way out, could find theirs. It was about reclaiming control over finances, over life, over destiny. I began to travel meeting women who had been through similar experiences. Women who had spent years in the shadows of their families, their voices drowned out by expectations. Some were hesitant at first, unsure of their own worth, but together we built something strong, something that couldn't be ignored. The foundation wasn't just about helping women financially. It was about reminding them that they were worthy, that they had power, that they had control over their lives no matter how many people tried to take that away. In helping others find their voices, I found mine again. And with every step I took, I realized that the road to healing wasn't just about moving on from the past. It was about using that pain to build something beautiful, something that would last. I had been broken, but now I was whole again, stronger and more determined than ever. This was my new beginning, and I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. The months that followed my move into the small house were filled with a quiet sense of purpose. I had a new rhythm, a new routine that no longer revolved around the whims and expectations of others. I spent my mornings working on the foundation, meeting women who needed guidance and support, helping them find their voices just as I had found mine. But as I stood at the threshold of this new life, I realized that there was still one thing holding me back, one thing I hadn't fully let go of, yet the need for closure. I had spent so much time consumed by thoughts of Lynn and Alex, by the way they had manipulated me by their attempts to control my life. I had spent so many sleepless nights replaying the hurt, the betrayal, wondering how they could do such a thing to me. But now, in the stillness of my new home, I began to understand something I hadn't before. Peace doesn't come from revenge. It doesn't come from tearing someone else down to make yourself feel better. Revenge would only keep me chained to the same toxic cycle that had kept me trapped for so long. The truth was, the only way to truly move forward was to release that need to let go of the anger, the bitterness, and the constant desire to make them feel the same hurt they had caused me. Instead, peace came from reclaiming my autonomy. It came from the decision to take control of my life, my choices, and my future. It came from standing firm in my belief that I was worthy of respect, that I was capable of making my own decisions without anyone else dictating what was best for me. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need to justify my actions, my choices to anyone, especially not to them. I had fought for my freedom for my life, and now I was living it on my own terms. But there was one final step, a final act that would allow me to close the chapter on my past and move forward without the shadow of their manipulation hanging over me. I needed to write to Lynn and Alex, not out of anger, not out of a desire for revenge, but out of a quiet assertion of my newfound strength. I sat at my desk one afternoon, the soft light filtering through the window, and I began to write, Lynn, Alex. I don't know what you thought you were doing, or why you thought it was okay, but what I do know is this: I am not the woman you tried to break. I am not the woman you tried to control. I am not weak, and I am not someone to be manipulated. What you did, what you both did, was wrong, and I will never forget that. But I have found peace, and I have found strength. I will no longer waste my energy on anger, on trying to make you understand. What I've realized is that the most powerful thing I can do is move on, and that's what I'm doing. I am not angry. I don't need to be. I simply need to live my life without the burden of your expectations, without the weight of your manipulation. I am free now, and I will continue to be no matter what. This is my final goodbye. I will no longer look back. Emily. As I finished the letter, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. It wasn't the satisfaction of revenge, nor was it the relief of holding on to my hurt. It was something deeper, something more lasting. It was the quiet strength that comes from letting go, from no longer needing the approval of those who had once held so much power over me. I folded the letter slowly, carefully. I didn't need to send it. I didn't need them to read it. This letter wasn't for them. It was for me. It was my final act of reclaiming my peace. And with that, I knew I was free. I had let go of the past, of the hurt of the desire for revenge. I had taken back my life, my power, and my peace. And now I could move forward, unburdened, unbroken, whole. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, I found myself slowly shedding the remnants of the old life I had left behind. The house was no longer a place of tension where every corner seemed to whisper reminders of betrayal. Instead, it had become a sanctuary, a place where I could breathe freely, a place that was mine. It was no longer defined by Lynn and Alex's expectations of me. It was defined by my own desires, my own choices. The realization that I had finally broken free, that I had stepped out from under their control, was still sinking in. I had spent so many years thinking their actions were motivated by concern, thinking that their overbearing love and constant interference were signs of their care. But now the truth was undeniable. Their actions were never about care. They were about control, about manipulating me into playing a role they had written for me, one where I was nothing more than an asset to their own needs and desires. I had been so blind to it for so long. Their voices, their smiles, their empty words of love, all of it had clouded my judgment. But now, with the distance I had gained from them, I could see it clearly. I was not their puppet. I was not something to be controlled. I was a person with my own life, my own dreams, and my own voice. And that was when I knew I had to let go. I had to leave behind the old life, the life where I was constantly trying to fit into a mold that wasn't mine, a life where I let others dictate my worth. It wasn't easy. Letting go of the familiar, even if it was toxic, is never easy. But in the stillness of my new life, I found something I had never truly felt before: peace. I no longer carried the weight of their manipulation. I no longer second-guessed my every decision. I had chosen a new path, a path of purpose, of clarity, of understanding that my worth was not tied to the approval of anyone else. Now, with a heart unburdened and a future of my own making, I was free. Free to live my life for me, not for anyone else. And as I moved forward, I did so with a quiet strength, knowing that the past no longer defined me. It was time to embrace the future. It was time to live in peace. In a world where expectations are often placed on us by those closest to us, it's easy to lose sight of who we truly are. The story of Emily is one that reflects a powerful truth: we are not here to live according to someone else's script. We were never meant to be controlled, manipulated, or shaped by the desires of others. And yet so many of us find ourselves in these situations, quietly enduring, thinking that love and family means sacrificing our own identity. But Emily's journey shows us something essential. The path to peace and freedom starts with reclaiming our autonomy, stepping away from the toxic influences, the judgment, and the manipulation. It's about realizing that our worth isn't defined by others, no matter how much they try to make us believe otherwise. Emily chose to walk away to break free and to build a life based on her own values, her own dreams, not the ones others tried to impose. This is a lesson we all need to learn. It doesn't matter what age you are or how long you've lived in the shadow of someone else's expectations. You have the power to take back your life. You have the right to choose peace over control, clarity over confusion. Your voice matters. Your life is yours to live, and no one can take that from you unless you let them. So I ask you, where in your life are you allowing others to control you? What step can you take today to reclaim your peace, your autonomy? It's time to stop being the character in someone else's story and start writing your own. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Share your experiences in the comments below. Let's support each other in this journey of reclaiming our lives.